Hi guys, what's up? Welcome back. Today I'm kind of linking this into what my last video was, which was me moving up north from London. This video is going to be more about why I did that. Kind of like the pros and cons of living in a big city, because I think it's not really spoken about enough. I think that there's a lot of videos out there of people moving to big cities and how amazing it is, but there's not a lot of videos about people leaving those cities, which happens more often than you might think it does, but no one really ever talks about it. So this is going to be why I moved out of London, and yeah, like just why I moved out of a big city. Let's do this. Oh my god, where do I even start? There's just so many reasons. I'm gonna start with the most obvious one. Expensive. London is very expensive. Literally everything, not just like your rent, which obviously that is the biggest expense, but everything's just more down there. Like if you want to go get a cup of coffee, it just costs more down there for some reason. If you want to, like anything that you want to do is just more expensive down there, just in general. And I think it's like that in all big cities actually. So it's not just specific to London. I think all big cities are like that. But that's probably the biggest thing about moving out of London, is just it's expensive, man. Honestly, I think that we like watch like movies and TV shows like Sex and the City and stuff like that, and we're like, oh my god, I'm gonna like move to London. I'm gonna be like London's version of Carrie Bradshaw. One, I'm not fashionable enough to even be close to Carrie Bradshaw. But two, she must have a trust fund or something, like something. Mr. Big has got to be her sugar daddy or something. Like there's something going on. There's just no way that she has that apartment, buys those clothes. Like if you live in that apartment, based on what I calculate her salary to be at, writing like 2 articles a week, dude, she's wearing trash bags. Most likely you won't even, if you do move to a big city, or London in particular, I don't really know about other cities because this is the only big city besides Johannesburg that I've lived in. You are probably going to be room sharing. If you have this idea that you're going to go to London and rent out an apartment and it's going to be great, that's just not the case. You are probably going to be room sharing, and you're probably not even going to live in London. You're probably going to live like 30 minutes outside of London, because I don't even know, like, do people even rent apartments in London, like Trafalgar Square, like London? Do people even do that? And if so, how? Like, help a sister out. Yeah, I think people have like a super romanticized view of moving to big cities, and that would be my point number 2, is that people romanticize like all cities quite a bit, like the big cities, and it's really like that when you actually move to them, like Paris, New York, London. It's really the way that you think it's going to be, especially in the sense that I kind of thought, oh, I'm going to move to London and I'm going to like have friends and I'm going to go out and I'm going to work, but I'm going to, you know, work hard, play hard. No, it was like all work, and there was no playing at all because I was broke. Broke and broken. And also, how do you make friends these days? How do you friend? I don't know how to even do it. That's a perfect segue into my next point. London is lonely. If you're an immigrant, London is very lonely. If you've lived there your whole life, and this is what people didn't understand, the people that I did know there just could never fully understand it. They didn't grasp it because they had lived there their whole lives. And then, yeah, you know, you've gone to school there, you have your friends, of course. But if you're an immigrant moving to London, it's very lonely because it's very hard to make friends in London. If you don't make friends in your job, it's very hard to make friends at all. It's just because people in London are very, like, they kind of have blinkers on, tunnel vision. Like, they're very focused on themselves, and you kind of have to be. I'm not saying that people in London are selfish. I'm just saying that it's the kind of city where you do have to kind of be focused on yourself a lot, because if you're not, you're just going to get lost in everything that's going on, because it's so busy and it's always go, go, go. Like, you kind of don't have a choice if you want to succeed. So yeah, everyone's just kind of focused on themselves, like what they're doing. Like, you are not going to randomly bump into someone and like become best friends. Like, that's not gonna happen, because no one's gonna stop for long enough to be like, how are you? Hi, love your hair. Like, no, it's just, well, it wouldn't happen because my hair looks like a mess, but also it wouldn't happen because everyone's too busy to stop and say anything. I have literally been waiting for, like, we're waiting for a train. We have nowhere to be, but even when you're literally waiting for a train, everyone's drafting emails, like doing something. No one's ever just like stopping and just doing nothing. And I like to do nothing. I was like waiting for a train one time, and I looked at this girl and I was like, oh my god, I love your hair, it's amazing. And she was just like, thanks. And she just like walked down to like the other end of the platform, and I was like, but you have nice hair. And of course everyone's not like this. It's a generalization, obviously. There's obviously people that are not like this that live in London, but it is very hard to make friends. It's a very lonely city. If you haven't grown up there, you better hope that you work with people you like, because that's the only way you're gonna make friends. And even then, I find that even if you make friends with a group that you work with, you're always the new kid. You never fully integrated into the group. You're always like a little bit on the outside. That's my experience, at least, but some people might have a different experience. Another thing to just get out of the way is, yes, London's technically more dangerous, but big cities are statistically more dangerous than smaller towns. It's not that big a deal to me personally. I don't think London is crazy dangerous. I had this debate with someone who was like, oh yeah, London is dangerous. And I was like, yeah, but I mean, I came to London from Johannesburg, so it's not that bad. And they were like, yeah, but we have like knife crime. And I'm like, yeah, and that sucks, and that's not good at all. And London has dangerous, you know, every city has dangerous things, but I was just like, honestly, just coming from where I came from, it's not like the worst city in the world, you know. In terms of big cities, it's actually pretty safe generally. Obviously, please, like, stuff happens. The point is that in London, if someone gets kidnapped or if someone gets stabbed, it's in the news. In Johannesburg, if someone gets stabbed, you won't hear about it because it happens so much that that's not report worthy. If someone gets shot, that's not on the news because it happens all the time. If they were reporting on all of the incidents in South Africa, they would literally never be able to talk about any other issue because that would take up like all of their time. So it is something to note. It is more dangerous, obviously, because it's a city, but it's not even close to being the worst in the world. It's pretty good for a big city, in my opinion. Another thing to be aware of is the commutes. The commuting time is pretty hectic in London, I'm not gonna lie. If you think about it, okay, from up north, if I want to get a train down to London, it's an hour and 45 minutes. From where I lived in London, which was only 20 minutes outside of the central city, a train into central London was also an hour and 45 minutes, or like an hour and a half, an hour and 20 minutes. And I'm like a 3-hour drive outside of London now. Commuting just makes me nervous for several reasons. One, I'm always scared that I'm gonna miss my train. And I can be sitting on the platform 30 minutes before the train comes, and I'll be sitting there like, you're gonna miss this train. And you know what's crazy? If you do miss your train, another one's probably coming in like max 10 minutes. Also, there's some characters on the London Underground. There's always a weirdo on the train. If you are on the train and there's not a weirdo, it's you. Another thing that TV shows get wrong is subway rides. They're like, oh yeah, you're just sitting one girl holding onto the pole. We're not gonna do that. One girl sitting in the seat, and like there's 2 seats beside her, some random old guy to the right, and she's just writing in her journal, and Arctic monkeys are playing in the background. That is not what it's like. In reality, a train ride is just, I don't know, boob to boob with some random girl that's like 4 inches taller than you. So it's like boob to rib cage, or like, well, actually in my case, rib cage to rib cage. I'm okay. And some guy's crotch on your back, and you're just like stuck. And then when your like stops coming up, you have even more anxiety because you're not like, now you're like, I'm gonna miss my platform as well because I can't get off this train because there's so many people on here. People that live in London or like surrounding London areas, is that you rarely actually go into the city central. So you think it's gonna be like oot, 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 oot in the city central, but it's more like in a Witherspoons, 20 minutes outside of London. Another thing is, it's quite difficult to save money when you're living in London. If you want to save for like a mortgage, if you want to save for a trip, if you want to save for your visa, it's very difficult to do because everything's very expensive. I don't know literally anyone who saves any money living in London. If you do want to save for your future, you might want to think of not living in a big city. And I think a lot of these points would apply to like big cities in general. I don't think these points just apply to London. If you do want to save for anything, studying, traveling, whatever it is, a big city is not the place that you're going to do that. I think it's hard when you want something so bad and you do work hard for it, and then you're like, I finally achieved it. I moved to London. And then you're like, oh, this is not what I thought it was going to be. It's really hard to admit that to yourself and be like, oh, it's not what I thought it was going to be. I wanted this thing for so long and I worked hard for it and I finally got it. And it's like that noise of like, I would like to close on a few, literally just a few good points about London. Super diverse. You'll meet every type of person. You will see every type of culture. So diverse. It's amazing. I love that about London. Yes, it's expensive to do things, but if you have money, there is so much to do. There's so many places to go. There's so many things that you can do. Another good thing is there's lots of job opportunities. I think that that's obvious in a big city as opposed to a small town. There's a lot more opportunities, which is great, especially in these times of COVID and kind of slowly coming out of COVID, but not really. I don't know what the hell's going on at the moment. There are a lot of opportunities still. Another thing is, it is a beautiful city with a lot of beautiful people. And I know I've listed a lot of reasons why I moved out, but that's just because that's the topic of this video and that was my experience. But it's actually a beautiful city. And you know what? If you want to move, I think that you should still move. If you're anything like me, you're not going to listen to this advice, and if you want to move into a big city, you're going to do it anyway. I think if you do want to move to a big city, you should definitely still do it because it could actually be the best thing ever. So that's pretty much it. That was my little video. I hope that you guys did enjoy the video, and I hope that you do take something away from it, or maybe you're just going to be like, that chick doesn't know what she's talking about. Either way, I hope you did enjoy the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye!